Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm working on my miniature bonsai bench, kind of working on it to make it a little more realistic. This bench started out as a toy woodworking bench, and it had this big kind of plastic handle to work the vise on the end, and it was always stuck, but I managed to get it loose today so I can unscrew it. And I've never liked this plastic handle here because it makes it look more like a toy. So if I can't find something to replace that with, I'll just leave the vise off the end. And I was thinking of maybe putting a flip-up table on the end. I have some wood from it was a jewelry box. Let me show you that. Over here I have the remains of a jewelry box. I got this to maybe put a bonsai on top as a display, and then I left it outside. It got all wrecked by the rain, and it ended up on the scrap wood pile. And I thought, well, the wood on it is kind of nicely aged, so it would match the bonsai bench quite well. So I'm trying to, take parts off of it, pieces off of it to use on my bench. So I was talking about a flip-up table, so maybe I could have a little extension on the end of the bench with some hinges and some props to hold it up. Maybe something like that. I've got all these trim pieces too that I might be able to use, somehow on the table. So that's what I'm doing right now, is trying out different ideas. I mentioned I wanted to kind of put linseed oil on the table today to kind of preserve it a bit more and give it a bit of, right now it looks kind of like an abandoned bench. Give it some color to the wood so it looks like it's an old bench, but it's well taken care of. I've broken down that jewelry box to just the wooden pieces. There's a lot of chipboard in it. So these are all solid wood pieces. So this is kind of what I've got to work with. Now I could make, a separate bench. I've got a nice tabletop here. That could be like a bench, another bench. Yeah, I've got a lot of nice solid wood pieces, some trim that I can work with. So I'll have to come up with something. I wish I could get this plastic handle out of here. It must be a press fit in here somehow. I'll work on that. So a lot of people have said, it's got this blue paint on here on the table and the red up top and then the yellow on the vise. I like it because it's got patina on it. It looks old. It would be really hard to duplicate that look of age. So I don't want to take the bright paint off. So I'll be leaving that on. Even though it's very colorful, I don't think it detracts from anything. I think it's weathered enough that it looks quite nice. I wanted to establish a scale for my mini bonsai bench, kind of how high a person would be. That will determine, what size I would have if I add a stool or any other accessories. So I have a woodworking bench in the basement. So the top of the table comes up to my hip, about my hip bone. So I went inside the house and I found like a military figure that is about the right size. So I'll show you what he looks like standing beside the bench. Here's a look at the person standing beside the bench. So he's maybe a little tall, like there's the hip. It's just a little tall, but I think it looks okay. I think that's approximately the right scale. So if I had a stool, it would be probably about this high. I think it needs a stool in front. I think it gives it a human element, that it looks like, well, my goal is to have it look like someone was working on bonsai and then they got called in for lunch and everything's kind of all set up. I could include this person in the final display. I could have a person sitting on a bench working on trees, maybe with their back to the viewer. Might look okay. I'll play around with that idea. Might look good. Might look kind of creepy too. I'm going to get out the linseed oil now and finish the bench. I've got my double boiled linseed oil. Let's see if I can get the cork out. Here it comes. And I'll pour it in a tin. Just enough to do the little bench here. This linseed oil is left over from my varnish making days when I was making violins. Okay. Oh, that smells like oil paints. All right, here I go. I'm going to start brushing the linseed oil on the bench. Seems to be soaking in nicely. It might take a few coats to kind of get it saturated into the wood. Sure smells nice. You can see it brings out the color of the wood a bit. So I'll leave this bench in the greenhouse here and put it outside in the sunny days, and it should dry the linseed oil quite nicely. It'll take a while, maybe 3 or 4 days. It's looking good. It kind of brings out the age of the wood. I like it. Here is a look at the bench with the linseed oil on it. So the wood was quite hungry. It really soaked the linseed oil in. But I'm really happy with the color of it. I think it looks really nice. I think the trees will look nice with this color as the table. It looks better than that kind of dusty gray color it was before. So I'll let that dry. It's soaking in quite well. It's already kind of dry to the touch in some places. Yeah, so I think that'll look nice. I could put a layer of varnish over top of the linseed oil if I want it looking a bit more shiny on the surface. We'll see about that. The bench is all oiled up. So now I'm thinking about plants. I have a lot of succulents here, which is fine. They're all kind of different. I would like to get a little more variety in the trees. So I'm going to look around and see what possible trees I have that could go in little tiny containers, because I've got these pots that Sophie made. So I need some trees for those. I have this Arizona cypress here. It's a small tree. It could be cut back and made look quite nice as a small tree. This was seeds from Derek. So that's a possibility. It's kind of different looking, and it could definitely be reduced to a smaller tree without any problem. I've got some false cypress and Port Oxford cedar here. They're kind of a little big. I do have a cutting from the false cypress there that might work. I'm not sure about them. I have some winter jasmine cuttings here. That's another possibility. Over here I have the lemon cypress that Bonsai J gave me a cutting. That could be reduced down and possibly made into something nice. I have some Chinese elm cuttings down here that could work. Down here I have lots of this miniature sedum. That could look quite nice planted and trimmed up into a tree-like form. So that's a possibility. Over here I do have lots of cuttings down here. That's another possibility. Maybe some of these Japanese maple cuttings. Until I got my miniature bonsai bench, I never thought of planting little tiny bonsai, but now I'm looking around to see what I can make into a little tiny miniature tree. It's kind of an exciting part of bonsai, is creating these little tiny trees. I think I'm going to really enjoy them in the future. The big trees are fantastic too. I like a variety of sizes, but I'm really enjoying these little tiny trees. I'll also be on the lookout for little tiny trees to go in my Chinese village penjing. I can always put them in a little pot and then sink the pot into the soil here so the root system doesn't grow too large and they gain too much vigor. So yeah, it'll be interesting planting some special little trees. I think I have, what is it, a cryptomeria here that could go in there with a bit of pruning. Yeah, some special things like that. I've got some juniper cuttings down here that I could use also. So I'll definitely be looking for some small trees in the future, both for the bonsai bench and for my village penjing. I'm thinking some cuttings off my dwarf pomegranate down here might be a good candidate also. There's been a lot of good suggestions of how I might display this bonsai bench in the comments section, so thank you very much. I'm going to try the picture frame idea, framing up the ground and kind of displaying it as an outdoor bench. But there's been suggestions that maybe try it as an indoor bench also, so that's another possibility. So that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.